What if I told you that last night I saw the perfect horror movie? The most well executed, terrifying, bone chilling film ever made. It's called The Boogeyman, and it is as fucking terrible as it sounds. Somehow, this fucking abomination of a movie has a 6.1 out of 10 on IMDb and a 61 on Rotten Tomatoes. A 6 out of 10? Come on. You're better than this, IMDb. This movie fucking sucked. The Boogeyman is what I'd like to call a jump scare movie. Like every 5 minutes there's a fucking jump scare and it never gives you a break. And they're just there for the sake of scaring the audience. It's just like, ooh, ah! You know, every fucking 5 seconds there's a goddamn jump scare. And I only got startled by one. One. You know that says something about the movie and how scary it is, you know. Right after watching this movie, I made a list of things that happened in it that I should mention in the video, and ooh boy, this movie has a lot of similarities to the film Smile, which came out last year in September. Smile isn't the greatest horror movie ever made, but I was pleasantly surprised with it. I thought it would fucking suck, but it was a pretty well-crafted original movie. Sure, it had a couple tropes in it, but what horror movie doesn't have tropes? Even Hereditary has them. The Boogeyman basically said, fuck you, Parker Finn, I can make Smile but better. And they decided to make Smile but worse. I get that this is based on a book by Stephen King, which came out before Smile, but no Stephen King book has ever been faithfully adapted into a movie. The best examples I can think of are It and The Shining, which they're both really good books and they're both really good movies, but the movies are nothing like the books. The Boogeyman book was published in 1978. That is fucking... that is a long time ago. And Smile came out in 2022, so there could be an argument that the Boogeyman movie, if it's a faithful adaptation to the book, it's not ripping off Smile or anything. I wouldn't say it's ripping off Smile, but it's certainly taking some stuff from Smile and basically putting it in their movie. But here's the funny thing. I'm assuming that this movie, even though I haven't read The Boogeyman by Stephen King, I'm assuming that this movie isn't faithful to it at all, because in 1982, they made a 30-minute short film based on The Boogeyman. 30 minutes. This movie that just came out is an hour and a half. That's 3 times the length of this short film. One of my problems with this movie is that it feels like it takes forever. This movie is on the shorter side, it's an hour and a half, which I mentioned earlier, but it feels like it's 3 hours long. Here's the funny thing. When I saw Beau is Afraid, which is an actual 3-hour long movie, it felt shorter than The Boogeyman. Even though The Boogeyman is half the length of Beau is Afraid, it still feels like that The Boogeyman is a longer movie. And I've seen this with other horror movies before. There are a lot of short horror films that feel much longer than they should feel, you know? And there's a lot of long movies that feel much shorter than they should feel. I'd say that this is proof of the saying, time goes by while you're having fun. And let me tell you, I had a lot of fun watching Beau is Afraid, and I was bored as shit while watching The Boogeyman. The characters in this movie are as one-dimensional can get. The film's protagonist is the stereotypical I'm not like the other girls teenager who's in high school, and her only personality trait other than that is that she's mourning the death of her mother. She has a little sister who's basically just the stereotypical little kid in every horror movie who's targeted by the monster, and then their father is a therapist. So it is very apparent that those are their only personality traits and that the movie's character development is very, very bad. There's a part in the beginning of the movie where the father is sitting in his office in his house and some fucking lunatic barges in and tells him about this evil monster. He doesn't say the name of the creature, but it's heavily implied that the monster is the Boogeyman, and we just think he's crazy, right? But really, the Boogeyman is real. And this guy dies in the house. And that sets off this chain of events where the Boogeyman starts terrorizing the family. And it is so fucking... it is so generic. There's a part in the movie where the teenage girl finds out where this strange, seemingly insane man lived. and it's an abandoned house. It is the literal cabin in the woods, but in the suburbs. And it is so funny because it's so out of place. Everything is just fucked in that house. That house looks like it's gonna collapse at any moment. And still, she decides to walk in with the excuse that she wants to find if anybody still lives there. And it's so like obvious that nobody does, but surprisingly, she finds out that a woman still lives there. She's holding a fucking shotgun, a double barrel boomstick. And she's like, "What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be in here." You know, the shit you hear from a fucking unhinged redneck. And the teenage girl is like, "I was trying to find if anybody still lives here," or something like that. I forgot what her exact line was. But then when they're talking, the woman with the shotgun's all like, "Don't move. The boogeyman is behind you," and it's building up tension and shit. She aims the shotgun at the boogeyman, which we don't see him. We don't see the boogeyman, but he's there. She aims the shotgun basically up at the ceiling, it looks like, and she pulls the trigger, and there's this loud boom, and it's supposed to be a jump scare, but it made me laugh because this woman is shooting at thin air. And it's really funny. And the teenage girl runs out of the house. In one scene in the beginning of the movie, the little sister loses a tooth by having the teenage girl tie her tooth to a doorknob via string, and she slams the door shut, but really it was the boogeyman who did it. And it was supposed to be a scary scene. This is important for a scene I'm about to discuss right now. So one of my favorite scenes in the movie is where the teenage girl is looking through all of her mother's stuff, and she finds like a joint and a lighter, but this joint looks like it's fucked up. It's like 30 years old, it's moldy and shit. It looks like it's just been sitting in a box for fucking decades. Later, when she invites her friends to her house, they're sitting up in her room and she's bored, and she decides to pull out this 30-year-old reefer, and they all take a hit. When she takes a hit, it's really obvious that she's never smoked before, and she freaks out and goes to the bathroom to throw up. But when she's vomiting, she pulls out this long string from her mouth, and it's attached to the little girl's tooth. And it is such a common horror trope. Pulling string or hair out of your own mouth is such a common trope. I've seen it in every horror movie. It's been done to death. It's just, let the trope rest. Let it rest, please. It is so stupid. There is one good scene in the movie, and that's where the little girl is playing video games on the couch, right? And she finds out that the boogeyman is out, right? The boogeyman, he is roaming the house. So she lays on the couch and hides, and the boogeyman is behind the couch. He is the most generic movie monster that I've ever seen. He's the standard pale-skinned, gray, humanoid creature. However, the boogeyman doesn't find the little girl, and he crawls away. But, so we assume that the little girl is safe. But then she gets tossed in the air by telekinetic powers and gets thrown into the television, and she wakes up at the hospital. So yeah, that's one of the only scenes I actually liked in the movie. It was a pretty well executed scene. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about this movie because I thought it was terrible and it was really shitty. And it wasn't like so bad it's good, it's just bad. So I'm giving The Boogeyman a 3.5 out of 10. It is not good. So yeah, see ya, slimes.